Good day everybody, we are the third group to report from the section EDA. Together with Ms. Agot, Ms. Carrasco, Mr. Frasco, Ms. Maghuyo, and Ms. Malapad, we will discuss literature review, citations and references, and the definition of terms. Together with Mr. Frasco, we will be discussing the literature review. Ms. Maghuyo and Ms. Malapad will discuss the citations and references, while Ms. Agot and Ms. Carrasco will discuss the definition of terms. So here are our objectives. At the end of the session, the students will be able to 1. Define literature review, citations and referencing, and definition of terms. 2. Explain the steps or processes and guidelines in writing literature review, citations and referencing, and definition of terms in research paper. And 3rd, recognize the functions and significance of literature review, citations and referencing, and definition of terms. Good day, I am Leila Kashmir A. Blanco and I will be discussing what is literature review, why is it important to write literature review, and what makes a good literature review. Let's begin with what is a literature review. Literature review is part of a research, usually found in Chapter 2, which serves or can be the basis of the research project itself. This contains an objective and concise summary or account of what has been published on a topic by accredited scholars and researchers. It must be defined by a guiding concept, which is the research topic, and it should also provide an overview of current knowledge, allowing the researchers to identify relevant theories, methods, and gaps in the existing research. Your sources of literature review include books, journal articles, e-books or hard copy books, and published studies. So why do we write literature review? Basically, you can begin writing a literature review once you have a clear topic already. So you begin your literature review to identify areas of prior scholarship. This is to ensure that the question of the topic you came up with is original, that it's something that hasn't already been discovered. You also want to link your new research question to ideas or to things that have come beforehand, so that you're not starting from scratch, you're not reinventing the wheel, instead you are building off of the scholarship of others. A literature review also identifies new ways to interpret the prior scholarship, so things and ideas written in the past might have new meaning in light of the research question, like how do we look at old ideas now that we have new questions. The literature review also serves to provide an overview of key topics that might be related to the research. And in doing this, we begin to identify major patterns or relationships within the pieces of literature or types of research that's been done on your topic. You can then identify the strengths and weaknesses or gaps in the literature as it relates to your questions or research. You can also become, to a certain extent, experts in identifying conflicting evidence. Literature review also gives you the foundation upon which you can now begin to explore your research question. You can establish what you already know, you can talk about what you don't know yet, and what you think you now know, piecing together your own interventions match with the prior scholarship. A good literature review doesn't just summarize sources, it analyzes, synthesizes, and critically evaluates to give a clear picture of the state of knowledge on the subject.
Now that we have learned what is a literature review and its importance on a research, at this point, let us try to know how are we going to make a literature review and how are we going to find the content that we are going to put on the review. And also, what are the things that we need to observe that will enable us to come up with a good literature review? The sources of the related literature can be classified as either a primary or secondary source. For primary sources, examples are artifacts, autobiographies, court records, diaries, emails, speeches, letter interviews, official reports, drawings, maps, photographs, speeches, and etc. For the secondary sources, we have here examples like biographies, critical studies for an author's work, dictionaries, journal articles, handbooks, magazines, newspapers, reports, and textbooks. Now, we all know already what are primary and secondary sources, and for that reason, I will no longer elaborate further. These are two sources of the related literature. Now, the question is, where can we find the sources of the related literature and studies? So, I will now give you some important informations on how to locate these contents. Generally, the sources of related literature and studies according to Calderon and Gonzalez 2015, it can be accessed on the following. First, libraries, and it can either be from the government or schools, private or public. Second, government and private offices. Third, the National Library, and then fourth, the online websites according to Aparejo 2018. Now, since students like us are mostly technologically savvy and exposed to computers and the internet, it is also good that we can utilize online websites for our review of related literature and studies. Now, this is very common now. We no longer resort to physical sources like books and stuffs in the libraries, because we go with the internet. No, so we feel the value of the internet, the search engines, and the websites that we have. And it's okay for as long as it is a credible source, it is a legit website, and it can be trusted. So that's the very thing that we need to understand, and we need to take note. And for example, for online websites, the best thing that, or I mean, the best website that we can use, for my own experience, you can go with Google Scholars. So you can search there for credible sources of your review of the related literature. Now that we have learned already where to find the contents of our related literature, now we will know how are we going to organize these contents to form a good review of related literature. First is through chronological order by date or year. So in organizing your related literature using chronological method, you could write your research paper review according to when they were published. If this approach will be used, it has to be ensured that the clear development of the way, location, or place of where such research is to be noted following the flow of years or specific dates. So this is considered the easiest way in organizing coherent literature reviews and studies. So it features how the topic is changed according to year or time, and how such a topic is thought of today. So that's according to Cronin and Ryan, colon 2008. So according to Calderon and Gonzalez 2015, related materials can be cited also chronologically, and that is according to the year. So the year it was written, and then the materials which were written earlier should be cited first before those which were written later. So this can be done especially when citation is by author or writer. So later you will also know how to make citations. So I have here an example of a chronology of events. So the circled years tells the chronological arrangement of events. So that is actually a review of related literature through chronological order. Next is through broad to specific topic. So according to Cronin and Coughlin 2008, you can also organize your related review of literature and studies by starting it from a general issue or topic, then lower it down to specific issues in the literature until it reaches the links to your research title, question, research keywords, thesis statement, and hypothesis. So an example of this is when you start the problem of teenage pregnancy, for example. So you start it by citing the teenage pregnancy internationally or globally. Start by establishing the trend of such problems globally. Then after that, at a national level, to your province, city or locality, and to your own barangay. So that's according to Aparejo 2010. Another way of organizing it is through major models or major theories. So another approach in writing coherent and organized review of related literature and studies is by arranging it according to its significant models or major theories. So what does it mean? So when various models or theories emerge in your studies, it is better to arrange them according to their importance in your research. So when you group the articles you have read and researched by models and theories, to get a coherent view of your review of related literature and studies. That's according to Cronin and Ryan and Coughlin 2008. Next is through prominent authors. So if a certain author or writer or a researcher had developed a certain innovation model, theory, or education breakthrough, and then the other authors or researchers continue studying and developing it. So it is good to rank such authors by their popularity or fame, because sometimes by using for example famous authors or popular authors, it can lead to a more exciting result to your research, because your readers or the panelists would really know that these studies were done by authors that are popular. So meaning their works are really used because of the popularity that they have. The next one you have through contrasting schools of thoughts. So by this approach of organizing your related literature and study, you can group together major arguments or contrasting differences that came up in your research, with researchers stressing their agreement and disagreement in their approaches and ideas. So meaning you can include on your review of related literature and a comparison of different thoughts. So you can include there some researches that agree to the topic you have chosen, and then you also cite the disagreement. So this can create a very good impact to your research. Next, you have through thematic concept or by topic. So what does it mean? So the thematic concept or topic reviews refers to the related reviews that are organized on a specific topic or a concept. So an issue or trend of the time. So it is different from chronological and by publication because it focuses on concept or topic rather than the time and year of publication. So it mainly it tells us about a concept or topic to a certain issue or trend of the time. So it does not concern with the time of the publication, with the year, when was it published. The last one you have through methodological approach. So in the methodological approach, the focus is on the method of the researcher used. For example, the literature review focuses on the method used by the graduating senior high school students to raise funds for their entrepreneurship proposal or method used to increase agricultural yields among agricultural students. So it can also be the method used by the STEM students in their researches on the preservation of our nature using the innovation brought by the technology. So it shows us the methods of the researchers. Now, making links between studies. So to make link between studies is another skill in writing your research, or particularly in writing your review of related literature. So this skill needs a thorough analysis from the research articles, literature, abstracts, and studies. So after reading your literature reviews, abstracts, and studies, comprehending and analyzing them, The next steps that you should do in order to decide whether the findings of those materials have linked to your studies. So meaning you are going to connect those researches, or those literature to your studies. So now, here are the effective transitions in research manuscript writing introduced by Panther M 2020, introductory words or phrases. Now, on the first column, you will see the things that you want to, and then on the next one, it's equivalent for the informal transition, and the last one is for the formal transition. Now, if you want to add, the informal transition would be and, besides, or also. But if you want it formal, it should be in addition, additionally, moreover, or furthermore. Now, if you want to compare, the formal transition would be in comparison or similarly. And if you want to contrast, so you will have there, the informal transition is but or yet. But for the formal transition, it would be in contrast, conversely, however, nevertheless, on the one hand, or on the other hand. Now, if you want to provide an alternative, so for the informal, it would be or. For the formal, it's alternatively, on the one hand, on the other hand. If you want to provide an example, so use for example or for instance. If you want to specify, the informal transition would be especially. But for the formal transition, it would be in particular or more specifically. If you want to emphasize, the formal transition would be in fact, indeed, in other words. And if you want to conclude, the informal transition is so. And then the formal transition would be in sum, in summary, in conclusion, thus, therefore, consequently, or taken together. So these are the things that you should consider. So here are the examples of the transitional words that you can use to link your study to another. So this is by Mahmoud 2016. So for the agreement, so you have there, similarly, author B points to, or you can use likewise, or author D also makes this point, or again, it is possible to see how author E agrees with author D. Now, if you like to point out disagreement on your review of related literature, so you can have, however, author B points to, or on the other hand, author C makes the case, or that, and then conversely, author argues, or nevertheless, what author E suggests argues the study of. So those are the arrangement that you can observe or consider. So now that you have learned already what is a literature review, where to get your contents for your related literature for your RRL, and at this point, let us now try to see what are the content that should be present on your review of related literature. So first, you have the introduction. So your introduction explains the focus and establishes the importance of the subject. So mainly, it discusses what kind of work has been done on the topic and identifies any controversies within the field or any recent research which has raised questions about earlier assumptions. So now, when you write your introduction, you have to bear in mind that it must have a focus and has to emphasize on the subject or the topic or the problem of your study. So it explains what kind of study or research has been done. So it also describes any controversies. And sometimes an introduction will summarize or evaluate the kind of research the researcher would like to undertake or may suggest how the findings of research will lead to further researches. So you can see here we have an example. So I have here two examples. So the first one, there are opposing views to the impact ICT has on the acquisition of learning by the students. So you can try to review to see from the examples that I have given on how are they able to put down the ideas on it. So it's for you to discover already. So you can just review the examples because I will not elaborate it further. Second is the body of the review of related literature. So the second content of the review is its body. So of course, the related review of literature, for the body, it is oftentimes divided into the major headings and subheadings. So in most cases too, the body of related literature and studies will summarize, evaluate, and assess the field of knowledge under study in the current stage. So it gives reports and findings on themes, issues, topics, trends for researchers to confirm or negate. So please note that in the review, it is about a preliminary of a research project. Then the body will focus on the argument in order to justify the issues, topics, or problems under investigation. So you should take note. So there you can see on the example that I have given, it is a body of a review of related literature in chronological order. So you can try to read that one, and then as you read, you will discover that the body contains already the summary, and then the evaluation, the assessment on the field of knowledge under the study in the current stage. So it shows you everything that is needed to be seen on the review of the related literature. So of course, the last part that you need to observe on your review of related literature is your conclusion. So the conclusion will give the summary of all the evidence that are being presented from the introduction and to the body of the related literature and studies. So aside from that, your conclusion will also give the precise key findings of other studies of the review in general concepts. So your conclusion is different from the conclusion of the entire research findings of your study. So please take note of that. Now, this conclusion here is specifically for the review of the related literature only. So it does not concern the conclusion of your research, but it concerns only on the literatures that you had compiled in relation to your current study. So it consists of one paragraph only, summarizing the main points of all the research findings from your abstracts, theories, and models used in the study or in your research. So now here is an example of a conclusion for your review of related literature and studies. So I have here 3 examples. The first one that is using summary. So take note of the link word that was used to sum up. So it used to sum up the literature and studies mentioned above, and so on. Now another example is using evaluation. So you have their different views on the lived experiences of teenage mothers have been presented from different findings of various researches and different perspective from prominent social theorists. So each view is supported by experiences of emotional and psychological journey into a knowledge of an early motherhood. And then the last example is using linkage of existing knowledge. So based from the related literature reviews and studies presented above, teenage pregnancy is nothing new in historical point of view and in worldwide phenomenon. So the reviews and studies support the idea that teenage pregnancy is mainly a social and not a medical problem. So I hope that it is clear to you from the introduction to the body and to the conclusion.
Hey everyone, I'm Grant Maghuyo, and together with Kila Malapad, we will be discussing the citations and references. So to start, what are citations? Citations are used to give credit to other writers when you use their ideas or their words. Citations also go in the main body of our papers. It gives a brief information, usually a surname of the author or authors, the year, the publication year and or the number or page number. So what are the importance of citations and references? So according to Hammer-Selly, as cited in Baraceros 2016, page 74, he states that one cardinal principle in research is acknowledging or recognizing the owners of any form of knowledge you intend to include in your research paper. So he says that doing this practice signals not just for honesty and courtesy to the learned people whose ideas lend information to your paper, but it also indicates your appreciation for their contribution to the field. Now that we know why citations and references are important, let's move on to knowing what are the purposes of citations. So Baracero's 2016, again page 75, states that there are 6 purposes to citations, and these are: first, to give importance and respect to other people for what they know about the field; next, to give authority, validity, and credibility to other people's claims, conclusions, and arguments, of course since they are not our own original ideas; next, to prove your broad and extensive reading of authentic and relevant materials about your topic; to help readers find or contact the sources of ideas easily; to permit readers to check the accuracy of your work; and lastly, to save yourself from plagiarism. So again, we have to cite or reference other people's works because they are not our own. We have to give credit and respect to the original authors. So now that we have understood the importance and purposes of citations and references, let's move on to our main focus, which is the APA 6th edition format. So APA, or American Psychological Association, is also called the author date style method. It is most commonly used to cite sources within the social sciences and also the educational sectors. So APA, or American Psychological Association, is also called the author date style method. It is most commonly used to cite sources within the social sciences and also the educational sectors. So the author date method means that the author's last name and the year of publication for the source should appear in the text. So for example, Jones, 1998. And also, a complete reference should appear in the reference list at the end of the paper. So 2 parts of the APA referencing styles that are essential are the in-text citations and referencing. So first, let's get into in-text citations. An in-text citation is a concise way to identify the source of certain information. It helps the readers to locate the corresponding entry in the reference list at the end of your paper. In-text citations consist of the author's last name, the publication year, and if you're citing a specific part of the source, then you include the page number or other locators such as a timestamp, a paragraph number, or even a heading. So for example, you use only one page, so you cite Smith 2014, page 170. Page numbers are not required when referring to the source as a whole. Example, when you say the study shows or the research shows. Page numbers are only necessary when the content has been directly quoted, meaning you copy the exact words of a part of the original author's ideas. So there are 2 ways to integrate the in-text citation: parenthetical and narrative citation. For parenthetical citations, you write the author's name and publication year within the parentheses, and you place it at the end of the sentences just before the period. So let's take a look at these examples. As you can see, the citation is placed within the parentheses and is placed just before the period. So remember that citations should go in first before you put a period. Next, for narrative citations, some information is incorporated in the running text. So you name the author in your sentence, followed by the year in parentheses, and place the page number after the quote. So for the examples, you can see that unlike the parenthetical citation that holds the author's surname, year, and page number inside the parenthesis, narrative citations incorporate the author's name in the text. So author's surname, followed by the publication year inside the parenthesis, then the page number, also in parentheses, just before the period. Next, Let's learn how to write APA 6th edition in-text citations while citing multiple authors. So if you only have to cite one author, you only have to follow either parenthetical or narrative style of citing. Like for example number 2, you can put the author's name and publication year inside the parentheses at the end of the text, or you can incorporate it in your running text like in example number 3. Next, when there are two authors, you separate their last names with an ampersand or with the word and when they appear in the running text. So as you can see in the examples, you use an ampersand to separate the authors inside the parentheses, but you use the word and when you put them in your running text. Again, note, never use an ampersand symbol in the running text. Instead, use the full word and. When there are 3 or more authors, separate their last names using commas. The last 2 authors' last names should be separated by both a comma and an ampersand. So let's take a look at these examples. Notice in example 1, we use a comma and an ampersand to separate the last surname. Again, use the word and when you incorporate the information in the running text. For the first citation, like this example, we list out all the authors and only use the ampersand for the final one. Sources with 3, 4, or 5 authors are shortened after the first citation. For the second citation onwards, only use the first author's name, followed by the et al., which means and others. So look at the example presented. We use only the first author's name, then followed by et al. Note that we should include a comma between et al. And the publication date. So for example, Taylor et al., comma 2018. There should be no punctuation between et al. And the author's name preceding it when in the running text. So a quick summary on citing 3 to 5 authors. For the first citation, list out all the authors and only use the ampersand for the final one. For second citation onwards, only use the first author's name, followed by the et al., which again means and others. Lastly, if a source has 6 or more authors, use the shortened version from the first citation. Sources with 6 or more authors are always shortened including in the first citation. So for example, Lunat et al. And Taylor et al. Unlike when we were citing 3 to 5 authors, where we only use et al. For the second citation onwards, when we cite 6 or more authors, we directly apply the usage of et al. After the first author's name, whether in the first citation or the second citation onwards.
Hi everyone, this is Maria Kela Malapad and I'll be discussing about the missing information of the citations and then the references. First is the no author. So if the author is unknown but you know the organization's name, then use the organization's name. So here, when a source does not list an individual author, it is often be attributed to the organization's name. For example, we have here Scriber 2019, and then according to the new research, followed by an ellipsis point, open and close parentheses, Microsoft, followed by a comma, and then the year of publication, which is 2014. So basically, these two are attributed from the organization's name rather than the author. And then in the next slide, if you don't know the organization's name, then use the title. So when using a title, the format is the same way as in the reference list. It's either in italics or in double quotation marks. So for example, Thinking Fast and Slow 2017, this is an example of a no author citation which is attributed from the title of one's work, and as you can observe, the title here is being italicized. So next is the no publication year, used in period D for no date. So here, instead of not citing the author because there is no date of the publication, now you can still make it by putting in period, and then D after the author's last name. So we have here example, open parenthesis, the author's last name, which is Johnson, followed by a comma, and then put the N period D, and then followed by a closed parenthesis. Third is the no page number. So here, include a chapter or a paragraph number instead. So if ever you'll be getting any important information from one's work and then there is no any page number, you can write the chapter or the paragraph number after the author's name and the publication year. So we have here example. First is open parenthesis, Johnson, followed by a comma, and then the publication year, which is 2019, comma, and then followed by the chapter, which is the chapter 3, and then don't forget the close parenthesis. In the second example, open parenthesis, McCombs, followed by a comma, the publication year, which is 2016, and then followed by a comma, and lastly the paragraph number, which is the paragraph number 4. And to make the paragraph word short, you can write para and then followed by a period and then the paragraph number, and then don't forget the close parenthesis. So next is the multiple sources in the same parenthesis. So if using multiple sources to support a statement, you can combine the in-text citation and separate them using semicolon, and then order the sources alphabetically. If using multiple sources from the same author, you don't have to repeat the author's name. You just need to add the author's year and then separate them with a comma. So here, if it happened that you are using a lot of sources, you can just cite them using an in-text citation style, and you just need to put a semicolon after the publication year per author in order to separate them. So we have here example. Several studies show that followed by an ellipsis point, meaning there is a continuation statement of this, but this is just a shorter term. And then followed by the citation, open parenthesis, Brown, ampersand, Broody, followed by a comma, the publication year, which is 2009, and then semicolon, another author, Porter, comma, and then followed by the publication year, which is 2004, and then separate them again using a semicolon, and then the author's name, which is Wayne, followed by the author's publication years, 2015, 2017A, and 2017B. So here, on this example, as you can see, we have 4 authors in general. Each of them are being separated by a semicolon, and then the author got 3, or the one who are citing the sources from the other authors got 3 of the cited information from the same person. So you don't need to put the author's last name repeatedly. Instead, you can just put the author's last name followed by the years of publication, and then you just need to separate them using a comma. Next we have here is the reference. So when we say reference, this is the list of sources that you used in your paper and usually located at the end of your writing. So always remember that a reference or your references should be sorted alphabetically. And then next we have here is the book citation referencing. So we have here a note that book titles should be italicized, and then the format of a book citation referencing should be like this. First is the author's last name, followed by a comma, the author's initials, period, and then followed by a open and close parenthesis, and then the publication year will be put inside, and then followed by a period. And the next would be the book title, open and close parenthesis, the book edition, followed by a period, and then next would be the city, comma, the state or country, colon, and then the book's publisher. So here, in a book citation, you should have put in mind that the first letter of the book title should be capitalized, and then the rest of the title should be italicized. So we have here example, the author's last name, which is Smith, followed by a comma, and then the author's initial, which is letter T, and then followed by a period, open parenthesis, the publication year of the book, which is 2019, and then followed by a close parenthesis and period. So after that, you're going to put the book title, which is the citing sources and referencing, colon, a quick guide, and then followed by the book's edition, open parenthesis, second edition of the book, and then close parenthesis, and followed by a period. And then after that, we have here the city, which is the Washington, followed by a comma, the state and country, which is the DC, and then colon, and the publisher of this book is Scribber. And then don't forget to put the period. So as you can see, or as you can observe on this example, the first letter of the title is being capitalized, and then all of the title are being italicized. Next is the journal article citations. So we have here a note that the journal title and volume number should be italicized. And the format should be the author's last name, comma, the author's initial, period, and then followed by a comma, and then an ampersand, the other author's last name, comma, the other author's initials, followed by a period, and then open parenthesis, the publication year, close parenthesis, and then followed by a period. And then next is the article title, period, the journal name, comma, the volume, open parenthesis, issue, close parenthesis, followed by a comma, and then the page number or numbers. And then don't forget the period. And then next would be the HTTPS, DOI.org, and then the DOI number. So in citing a journal article, it is very important that you will need, or you will put the complete information of the journal, such as the author's name with an ampersand in between, the publication year, the title of the article, the journal name, as well as the volume and the page numbers of the journal that you have cited. And then moreover, as you can observe in citing a journal article, at the end of the citation, there is the HTTPS, DOI.org, and then the DOI number. So here, the HTTPS and the DOI.org will be as is, and then all you have to do is to input the DOI number, which is usually located at the top portion of an article. Yet there are some authors that they put the DOI number and the DOI in the end of their article or journal. So we have here example, Andref, comma, W, period, comma, ampersand, Istaudohar, followed by a comma, P, period, D, period, open and close parenthesis, 2000, and then followed by a period. And then next is the Evolving European Model of Professional Sports Finance, period, Journal of Sports Economics, comma, the first volume, and then in the third issue, comma, pages 257 to 276, and then period, and then followed by the HTTPS, the DOI.org, and then followed by the DOI number. So as you can observe on this example, the journal title and the volume and the edition, or the issue rather, are being italicized. And then lastly is the website citation. So the format we have here is the last name of the author, followed by the initials, and then followed by the complete publication year, and then the page title, and then the retrieve from what website. So we have here example, Warland D, comma, the initials of the author, which is J, and then period, open and close parenthesis, the complete publication year, which is 2015, followed by a comma, July 27, and then after the close parentheses followed by a period, and then the page title, which is US flood risk could be worse than we thought, and then followed by a period, and then don't forget the retrieve from where or which website. So we have retrieved from http time.com, and then we have here the DOI number, and then the title of the page, which is Flooding Risk Coastal Cities. So that would be all for the citations and references. So I hope that you've learned something from these topics.
Good day everyone, I'm Nicole. Now let's proceed to the last topic, which is the definition of terms. Definition of terms is an important part of a research paper in which the key or important terms in the study are clearly defined. This gives your readers an understanding of the concepts or factors that will be used or that will be discussed throughout your study, as well as contextual information as to how you will be using those concepts in your study. The definition of terms ensures that your readers will understand the components of the study in a way that you will be presenting them, because often your readers may have their own understanding of the term or not be familiar with them at all. So there are actually two types of definition of terms that we can use in our research papers: the conceptual definition and the operational definition. The conceptual definition means the meaning of the term is based on how it is defined in the dictionary, encyclopedia, or other published materials. On the other hand, the operational definition means the meaning of the term is based on how it was used in the study. You have to remember that you will only use the operational meaning when a term has a specific or unique meaning in the context of the study. I will be giving you few examples in the next slides showing the difference between conceptual definition and operational definition for you to better understand it. The first example is face-to-face. In conceptual definition, it is when the people involved are being close together and looking directly at each other. But in the operational definition, it refers to one of the modalities used in learning delivery in which both the teacher and the student should be in the same place or setting, such as the classroom. So as you can see, the term face-to-face has two different meanings. Next is the word online. As we all know, the word online means it is controlled by or connected to another computer or network, while its operational meaning is it refers to another form of distance learning wherein the teacher and students will have their lessons using the internet connectivity. The last example is the word module. The conceptual definition is it is a series of standardized units used together, such as an educational unit that covers a single subject or topic. But when you are using the keyword module in your study, you have to include this in the definition of terms section as an alternative distance learning delivery in which students are required to read and answer the activities specified in the module. Also, you have to remember that it is necessary to acknowledge or cite sources from where you borrow your definitions. So much for that. Let me call on Ms. Agot to discuss the next part of this topic. Thank you.
To further elaborate, here are the guidelines in writing definition of terms. The first one is write introductory statement. This indicates that researchers should keep the definition in a thesis brief and basic as it will be elaborated in the body of the paper. It shortly describes the content of the definition of terms. Next is to list in alphabetical order the words, terms that are included. The definition of terms must be arranged alphabetically. It must be also stated if you use your definition of terms technically or operationally. The third guideline is indentation should be applied to each term. The terms should be followed by a period. Through indentation, it provides the readers with a sense of continuity and signals them to dive into another meaning in logical fashion. The next one is the word can underline or not. It can be bold or italic or not. Underlining, italics, and bold text are used by the researchers to emphasize certain words. Also, our researchers use to define a word or phrase in a unique manner, or simply as the term is the key to understanding the content of the paper. The fifth one is acronyms. Initials should be defined clearly. In research, acronyms should be written out in full of the first use in both the abstract and paper itself and followed by the abbreviated form in parentheses as in Department of Education or DepEd. The next guideline is to not overflow with technical terms in research. In writing a term, it should be precise and brief so that the reader will comprehend what is the main message of the word and help them to transmit the content more effectively. The last one is to cite sources from where you borrow definitions. It's important to cite sources you use in your research for several reasons. First is to show your reader you have done proper research by listing sources you use to get your information, and to be a responsible scholar by giving credit to other researchers and acknowledging their ideas. To sum it up, the purpose of definition of terms in research papers is to avoid ambiguous meaning to terms that otherwise can be interpreted in different ways. These give your readers an understanding of the concepts or factors that will be discussed throughout your study, as well as contextual information as to how you will be using those concepts in your study.